Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars through the main window. 300 years had passed since humans first met the alien races of the Galactic Federation. 12 different species had welcomed humanity into their ancient alliance. The Zephyrians, with their crystal bodies, taught humans about energy. The Calarians, with their 6 arms, shared knowledge of building. The Vorthon helped humans understand space travel that moved faster than light. Amy Bennett sat at her station and checked the communication systems again. She had been trying to reach Federation Command for 6 hours now. The silence worried her more with each passing minute. Jake walked over to her station and placed his hand on the back of her chair. "Still nothing from the Federation," Amy said, without looking up from her screens. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried different frequencies. "Not even the automated signals we usually get from the trade stations." Carl Hughes looked up from his navigation desk. His job was to plot their course through space, and he had been tracking their position near the edge of Federation territory. "Captain, we should be able to reach at least 50 different Federation outposts from here. The communication array is working fine on our end." Jake felt a cold worry grow in his stomach. The Federation never went quiet. Their communication networks had worked without fail for thousands of years. Trade ships moved between worlds every day. Scientific stations sent reports every hour. Military bases checked in every few minutes. The silence was not normal. "Dr. Parker, please come to the bridge." Jake spoke into the ship's communication system. Lisa Parker was their science officer and the smartest person on the ship. If anyone could figure out what was happening, she could. Lisa arrived on the bridge a few minutes later. She carried a small device that showed readings from their sensors. Her face looked worried as she showed Jake the screen. "Captain, I have been monitoring subspace for the last 4 hours. The normal background chatter from Federation space has completely stopped. No trade signals, no scientific data, no military communications." "What could cause that?" Jake asked. "I do not know," Lisa said. "Even if there was some kind of war or natural disaster, we should still be getting emergency signals or distress calls. This level of silence suggests that the entire Federation communication network has been shut down or destroyed." Carl Hughes spoke up from his station. "Captain, I recommend we set course for Kepler Prime. It is the closest Federation world and serves as a major trade hub. If we can get there, we might find answers." Jake nodded. Kepler Prime was home to the Zephyrians, who had always been friendly to humans. The planet housed over 2 billion crystal beings and served as one of the most important trade centers in the galaxy. If something had happened to the Federation, the Zephyrians would know about it. "Set course for Kepler Prime maximum speed," Jake ordered. "Amy, keep trying to reach anyone on Federation frequencies. Lisa, I want you to monitor all sensors for anything unusual." The Defiance turned toward the Kepler system and engaged its faster. Then light drive. The journey would take 3 days at their top speed. Jake hoped they would find answers when they arrived. During the journey, Amy continued trying to reach Federation worlds. She sent messages to dozens of different planets and stations. Each attempt met with silence. The lack of response felt wrong, in a way that made everyone on the ship nervous. Lisa spent her time studying the sensor data. She found something strange in the readings but could not identify what it meant. There were traces of an energy pattern she had never seen before. The energy seemed to be spread across space in a way that suggested it had come from the direction of the galactic core. On the 3rd day, they reached the Kepler system. Carl Hughes brought the ship out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They expected to see the usual traffic of ships moving to and from the planet. Instead, they found empty space. "Where are all the ships?" Amy asked as she looked at the empty sensor display. Jake stared at the planet through the main window. Kepler Prime looked normal from a distance. The crystal cities of the Zephyrians still gleamed on the surface. The orbital station still hung in space around the planet. But there were no ships, no signals, no signs of life. "Take us into orbit," Jake ordered. His voice sounded steady, but inside he felt fear growing stronger. As they approached the planet, Amy tried to contact the surface. Kepler Prime, this is the UES Defiance requesting permission to land. She waited for an answer that never came. Lisa studied the planet with their sensors. Captain, I am detecting the same energy pattern here that I found in space. It is much stronger near the planet. They entered orbit around Kepler Prime and looked down at the crystal cities. The buildings stood tall and beautiful just as they always had. But no lights moved through the streets. No ships launched from the spaceports. No signals came from the communication centers. Captain, Carl said quietly, I think everyone is gone. Jake Morrison walked through the empty streets of Kepler Prime with his team behind him. The crystal buildings rose high above them like frozen waterfalls. Beautiful designs covered every surface, but no footsteps echoed in the silence. Amy Bennett carried a scanner that searched for any signs of life. Carl Hughes and Lisa Parker followed close behind, checking their own devices. The power systems are still running, Lisa said as she studied her readings. All the buildings have electricity and heat. The water systems work fine. Even the air recycling plants are operating normally. Amy stopped walking and pointed her scanner at a large building ahead of them. That should be the main communication center for this district. If anyone is still here, they would be trying to send signals from there. They entered the building, through doors that opened automatically. Inside, they found rows of crystal computers that glowed with soft light. The Zephyrian technology was still active and working, but no one was operating it. Carl found something strange on one of the computer displays. The screen showed a message in the Zephyrian language. Lisa came over to read it since she had studied their writing system. It says they detected an approaching energy wave from the galactic core, Lisa translated. The message warns all Zephyrians to prepare for something called the Great Silence. Then the message just stops in the middle of a sentence. Jake felt a chill run down his back. How long ago was this message sent? Lisa checked the timestamp on the display. 3 months and 4 days ago. That matches when we lost contact with the Federation. They spent 2 more days searching Kepler Prime. Every building was empty but undamaged. Food sat on tables as if people had just stepped away for a moment. Personal belongings remained in homes. Vehicles sat parked in streets with their engines, still warm. It was as if every Zephyrian on the planet had simply vanished in an instant. On their way back to the Defiance, they received a signal from another human ship. Paul Carter commanded the merchant vessel UES Horizon, and his voice sounded relieved when he spoke to them. Captain Morrison, thank goodness we found another human ship, Paul said over the communication system. We have been searching for weeks trying to find anyone still alive. The Horizon met them in orbit around Kepler Prime. Paul brought his ship alongside the Defiance and requested permission to come aboard. Jake agreed and soon found himself shaking hands with the older captain in the docking bay. Paul looked tired and worried as he spoke. We were on a trade run to the outer colonies when everything went silent. We have been to 12 different worlds since then. Every Federation planet is the same as this one, empty but undamaged. What about human colonies? Jake asked. All fine, Paul replied. Every human world we checked is operating normally. It seems like only the Federation species have disappeared. Paul brought his crew over to the Defiance to share information. His engineer, Maria Santos, worked with Lisa Parker to study the energy readings they had collected. His communications officer, Danny Cooper, helped Amy Bennett analyze the signals they had recorded. Look at this pattern, Maria said, as she showed Lisa a display of energy readings from different worlds. The disappearances started at the galactic core and moved outward like a wave. Each Federation world went silent in order based on how far they were from the center of the galaxy. Lisa studied the data and felt her worry grow stronger. This was not random. Something moved through space, systematically visiting each Federation world. Over the next few weeks, the two ships traveled together, visiting more Federation planets. They found the same thing everywhere. Empty cities with no signs of struggle, all technology working normally but no people anywhere. The strange energy readings were stronger on worlds closer to the galactic core. Steve Walsh served as Jake's first officer, and he organized teams to search for any survivors. They found a few automated distress beacons that had been activated just before the disappearances. The messages all said the same thing. Federation sensors had detected something approaching from deep space. Then the signals stopped. "Captain, I think we need to accept what this means," Steve said during a meeting in the conference room. Every Federation species is gone. 12 different races that had existed for thousands of years have all vanished in the same 3-month period. Amy had been quiet during most of the meeting, but finally spoke up. "The question is, why were humans spared? We were part of the Federation too. Why did whatever did this ignore human worlds completely?" Paul Carter leaned forward in his chair. "Maybe because we were the newest members. We only joined the Federation 300 years ago. All the other species had been part of it for much longer." Lisa shook her head. "I do not think it was about how long we had been members. The pattern suggests this thing was looking for something specific, something that the other Federation species had but humans did not." Maria Santos had been working on analyzing the energy signatures, and she had found something important. "I think I know what happened to them," she said. "The energy readings match theoretical patterns for dimensional displacement. I believe every Federation citizen was transported somewhere else." "Where?" Jake asked. "I cannot tell from the readings," Maria replied. "But based on the energy requirements involved, I do not think they were moved to another location in our galaxy. This looks like they were taken outside normal space entirely." The group sat in silence as they considered what this meant. Something had come from the galactic core and systematically removed every advanced species from the galaxy. Only humanity remained to wonder what had happened and why they had been left behind. Carl Hughes had been studying star charts and navigation data. He looked up from his work with a concerned expression. "Captain, I have been tracking the path of this energy wave. If the pattern continued, it should have reached human space 4 weeks ago. But it stopped at the edge of Federation territory." "Stopped?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. Whatever caused this seems to have deliberately avoided human worlds. It went around us and continued outward to the rim of the galaxy." Jake looked around the table at his officers and the crew of the Horizon. They were probably some of the last. Intelligent beings left in their part of the galaxy. The thought scared him more than he wanted to admit. 6 months after finding Kepler Prime empty, the combined crews had visited 47 Federation worlds. Every planet told the same story. Empty cities full of working technology, but no living beings anywhere. Lisa Parker and Maria Santos had collected enough energy readings to map the exact path of whatever had caused the disappearances. Jake Morrison stood in the science lab aboard the Defiance, looking at a display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked every Federation world they had visited. A blue line traced the path of the energy wave from the galactic core outward to the edge of known space. "The pattern is too perfect to be natural," Lisa said as she pointed to the display. "Whatever did this knew exactly where every Federation world was located. It visited them in order of distance from the galactic core with mathematical precision." Tony Rodriguez had joined their group when they rescued him from an automated research station. The engineer had been working alone for months, trying to understand what had happened to his Calarian colleagues. His technical skills had proven valuable in analyzing the alien technology they found. "I have been studying the Calarian computer systems," Tony said, as he brought up a new display. 3 days before they disappeared, the Calarians received a warning message from their homeworld. The message talked about something called the Great Silence and instructed all colonies to prepare for immediate evacuation. Amy Bennett looked up from her communication equipment. "I found similar messages in the Zephyrian networks. They all mention the Great Silence, but none of them explain what it actually means. Paul Carter had become the unofficial leader of their small fleet. More human ships had joined them as word spread about their discoveries. They now had 12 vessels working together to explore the empty galaxy and search for answers. "We need to find a Federation research facility," Paul said during their daily meeting. "Somewhere they might have been studying this phenomenon before it happened." Carl Hughes had been studying star charts and found what they were looking for. "There is a hidden research base in the Calarian system. The location was classified, but I found references to it in their navigation databases." The journey to the secret facility took them deep into Calarian space. The research station was built inside a large asteroid that had been hollowed out and equipped with advanced laboratories. Like everything else they had found, the station was empty, but still operational. Lisa Parker led a team into the main laboratory while Tony Rodriguez worked on accessing the computer systems. What they found there changed everything they thought. They knew about the disappearances. "These records go back 50,000 years, Lisa said as she studied the data files. "The Calarians have been tracking a recurring phenomenon they call the Harvester. Every 50,000 years, something emerges from the space between dimensions and systematically removes all advanced civilizations from the galaxy." Tony had managed to activate a holographic display that showed detailed information about the entity. The image was disturbing in its alien geometry. It appeared to be made of pure energy that existed partially outside normal space. "According to this data, the Harvester feeds on consciousness itself," Tony explained. "It is attracted to species that have developed advanced mental abilities, especially those that can link their minds together through technology." Amy studied the files that described how Federation species communicated. Every Federation race had developed some form of telepathic or mental linking technology. They could share thoughts and experiences directly from mind to mind. "Except humans," Carl said quietly. Lisa nodded as she read more of the research data. "The files say that humans were considered mentally primitive by Federation standards. We never developed true telepathic abilities or mind-linking technology. We still used electronic communication systems like radio and computers." Steve Walsh had been quiet during most of the discussion, but finally spoke up. "So our primitive communication methods saved us. The Harvester was not interested in us because our minds were not advanced enough to be worth consuming." The research files contain detailed information about previous cycles of the Great Silence. The galaxy had been emptied of advanced life many times throughout history. Each time, a few primitive species survived and eventually evolved to fill the empty worlds. Then after 50,000 years, the Harvester would return to feed again. Paul. Carter studied the historical data with growing concern. "If this cycle repeats every 50,000 years, then the Harvester will come back. Our descendants might be advanced enough by then to attract its attention." Maria Santos had been analyzing the technical specifications of the Harvester. "The entity exists primarily in what the research calls hyperspace. It can only interact with our dimension when it encounters consciousness that operates on specific frequencies." "What kind of frequencies?" Jake asked. "The kind that Federation species used for their mental linking technology," Maria replied. "Humans have never operated on those frequencies, which is why the Harvester ignored us." Tony found additional files that contained the most disturbing information yet. "Captain, the research indicates that the Harvester is still in our galaxy. After feeding on all the Federation species, it returned to the galactic core where it will remain dormant for exactly 50,000 years. The implications hit everyone at the same time. They were not alone in the galaxy. Something was sleeping at the center of their spiral of stars. Something that had consumed every advanced civilization except humanity. And in 50,000 years, it would wake up hungry again. "There is more," Lisa said as she continued reading the research files. "The Calarians believed that a few Federation species might have escaped by retreating to pocket dimensions or traveling to distant galaxies before the Harvester arrived. Amy had been monitoring communication frequencies while they worked and suddenly detected something unexpected. "Captain, I am picking up a very faint signal. It is coming from outside our galaxy." The signal was weak and intermittent, but clearly artificial. Someone or something was trying to communicate across the vast emptiness between galaxies. Lisa worked with Amy to clean up the transmission and decode its meaning. "It is a Federation emergency frequency," Amy said with excitement in her voice. "Someone survived, and they are trying to reach any Federation worlds that might still exist." Jake felt hope rise in his chest for the first time in months. Maybe they were not completely alone after all. Maybe somewhere in the darkness between stars, other survivors were looking for signs of life. But even as hope grew, he could not forget what they had learned about the Harvester. The entity was still out there waiting to wake up and feed again. Humanity had inherited an empty galaxy, but they had also inherited a terrible responsibility to make sure the silence never ended. The signal from outside the galaxy continued for 3 weeks before it suddenly stopped. Amy Bennett had managed to decode part of the message before losing contact. The transmission came from a group of Vorthan survivors who had escaped to a distant galaxy before the Harvester arrived. They were warning any remaining Federation members to stay hidden and avoid developing advanced mental technologies. Jake Morrison called a meeting of all ship captains in their small fleet. They now had 23 human vessels working together to explore the empty galaxy. Each captain represented hundreds of crew members and thousands of colonists who looked to them for leadership. Admiral Helen Foster had arrived 2 weeks earlier, commanding the heavy cruiser UES Liberty. She outranked everyone else in the fleet and had taken charge of military operations. Her presence brought order to their group, but also brought new problems. "We have an opportunity here that humanity has never had before," Helen said as she addressed the gathered captains. "An entire galaxy of advanced technology just waiting for us to claim it. We could build an empire that spans thousands of worlds." Paul Carter shook his head. "Admiral, with respect, we know what happens to species that become too advanced. The Harvester will return in 50,000 years. 50,000 years, Helen replied. "That gives us time to prepare. We can study the Harvester and find ways to fight it. Humanity does not have to live in fear." Danny Cooper had been promoted to science officer aboard the Horizon, and he had spent months studying Federation technology. "Admiral, the research files are clear. No Federation species ever found a way to fight the Harvester. It exists partially outside our dimension, which makes it nearly impossible to attack with conventional weapons." Tony Rodriguez supported the Admiral's position. "But we have something the Federation species never had. We know the Harvester is coming. We can prepare defenses and develop weapons specifically designed to fight it." Lisa Parker stood up to address the group. "The problem is not whether we can fight the Harvester. The problem is that developing the technology to fight it might make us attractive to the entity. The research suggests that advanced consciousness itself is what draws its attention." The debate continued for hours. Some captains believed humanity should expand across the galaxy and claim the abandoned Federation worlds. Others argued for a more cautious approach that would keep humans below the threshold that attracted the Harvester. Steve Walsh had been studying the historical records and found information that worried him. According to the Calarian files, this cycle has repeated dozens of times throughout galactic history. Every time a few primitive species survive and eventually become advanced enough to attract the Harvester again. "Exactly my point," Helen said. "We cannot avoid this cycle by hiding. The only way to break it is to become strong enough to fight back." Carl Hughes had been plotting courses to various Federation worlds and studying their defenses. "Admiral, even if we could fight the Harvester, we would be fighting it alone. The Federation had 12 species working together and they still lost." Amy had been monitoring communications and found something that changed the discussion. "Captains, I have been receiving weak signals from several directions outside our galaxy. I believe multiple Federation species escaped to different locations. We might not be as alone as we thought." This news sparked new debates about whether humanity should try to contact the survivors or maintain the silence that had saved them. Some argued that working with Federation survivors would help them prepare for the Harvester's return. Others worried that any contact might alert the sleeping entity to their presence. Maria Santos had been analyzing the energy patterns left by the Harvester and made a disturbing discovery. The entity appears to be dormant but not completely inactive. I am detecting very faint energy fluctuations from the galactic core. If we develop certain types of technology, it might wake up early. Jake felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. The choices they made would affect not just their generation, but every human who came after them. What specific technologies should we avoid? He asked. Anything that involves linking human minds together, Maria replied. Neural networks, telepathic communication, shared consciousness. These are the technologies that make species attractive to the Harvester. Helen Foster was not convinced. So we should deliberately keep humanity primitive and ignorant. That does not sound like survival to me. That sounds like surrender. It sounds like wisdom, Lisa said. The Federation species were incredibly advanced, but their advancement led to their doom. Maybe there is value in choosing to remain simple. The fleet captains spent 3 days in debate before reaching a decision that satisfied no one completely. They would split into 2 groups. Some ships would establish conservative colonies that avoided dangerous technologies. Other ships would pursue expansion and advancement with full knowledge of the risks. Paul Carter agreed to lead the conservative faction. His ships would return to human space and establish monitoring stations to watch for signs of the Harvester or returning Federation species. They would maintain current technology levels and avoid any research that might attract unwanted attention. Helen Foster would lead the expansion faction. Her ships would claim abandoned Federation worlds and begin reverse engineering alien technology. They would prepare humanity for the eventual return of the Harvester by building defenses and weapons. This split feels wrong, Jake said, as they prepared to go their separate ways. Humanity should face this challenge together. We are facing it together, Helen replied, just from different directions. If the conservative approach works, you will survive to rebuild after the Harvester returns. If the expansion approach works, we will be strong enough to fight it. Amy had mixed feelings about the decision. What if we lose contact with each other? What if one group forgets about the other? We will maintain communication, Paul promised. Both groups will monitor the same frequencies. We will share information about any discoveries or threats. As the 2 fleets prepared to separate, Tony Rodriguez made one final observation that worried everyone. The Federation files suggest that species division is also part of the historical cycle. Survivors always split between those who want to hide and those who want to fight. Maybe that division is what allows the Harvester to succeed. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered if they were making the right choice. Splitting humanity seemed wrong, but so did forcing everyone to follow the same path. At least this way, if one approach failed, the other might succeed. Remember? Lisa said to both groups. We are not just trying to survive. We are trying to break a cycle that has repeated for millions of years. That will require both caution and courage. The conservative fleet turned toward human space, while the expansion fleet headed deeper into Federation territory. Behind them, the galaxy remained mostly empty except for sleeping dangers and distant watchers who might one day decide to return home. 25 years had passed since the Great Split, and humanity had grown into 2 very different civilizations. Jake Morrison was now an old man serving as director of the Conservative Alliance monitoring stations. His hair had turned gray and his hands shook slightly, but his mind remained sharp as he watched the galaxy for signs of danger. The Conservative Alliance had built 12 monitoring stations throughout human space. Each station was equipped with powerful sensors that could detect energy patterns similar to those left by the Harvester. Kate Sullivan commanded the main station at Alpha Centauri and reported directly to Jake about any unusual activities. Director: Morrison? "We are detecting strange energy readings from the expansion territories," Kate said during their weekly communication. "The patterns are different from what we saw during the Great Silence, but they are definitely artificial." Jake studied the sensor data from his office on the monitoring station near Earth. The readings showed increasing energy activity in the regions where Admiral Foster's expansion fleet had established their new civilization. They called themselves the Expansionist Union and claimed over 200 former Federation worlds. Laura Mitchell served as the Alliance's chief engineer and had spent years studying the Harvester's energy signature. She joined Jake in his office to examine the latest readings from expansion space. "These patterns suggest they are experimenting with neural linking technology," Laura said as she analyzed the data. "The energy frequencies match theoretical models. For artificial telepathy," Jake felt a familiar cold worry in his stomach. "How close are they to crossing the threshold that attracts the Harvester?" "Still far below dangerous levels," Laura replied. "But the trend is concerning. Their energy output has increased by 12% each year for the past 5 years. The FADE's Conservative Alliance had maintained secret contact with moderate elements within the Expansionist Union. Dr. Nathan Wright led their scientific research and occasionally shared information with the Alliance, despite orders from his government. To avoid such contact, Nathan sent us this data packet yesterday," Kate said as she brought up a classified transmission. "He is worried about the direction their research is taking but cannot speak openly about his concerns." The data showed that expansionist scientists had successfully created limited neural networks that allowed small groups of humans to share thoughts and experiences. The technology was primitive compared to what the Federation species had achieved, but it represented the first step down a dangerous path. Alex Davis commanded one of the Alliance scout ships that secretly monitored expansionist activities. His reports painted a picture of a civilization growing rapidly in both size and technological sophistication. "They have reverse-engineered most Federation technologies," Alex reported during a secure communication. "Their cities are rebuilding themselves using Calarian construction methods. Their ships now use Zephyrian energy systems. They are advancing faster than any species in recorded galactic history." Jake called a meeting of the Alliance leadership to discuss their options. The original plan had been to let both approaches develop independently, but the expansionist progress was happening faster than anyone had expected. "We need to consider intervention," said Sam Johnson, who had replaced Paul Carter as military commander after the old captain died in an accident 3 years earlier. "If they continue on this path, they will reach dangerous consciousness levels within 50 years instead of 50,000. Lisa Parker was now the Alliance's chief scientist and had continued studying the Harvester phenomenon. She had grown old alongside Jake, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. The research files suggest that early awakening of the Harvester has happened before. Species that advance too quickly can trigger the cycle to restart. "What kind of intervention are you suggesting?" Kate asked. Sam's answer shocked everyone in the room. "Sabotage. We need to slow down their technological development by disrupting their most dangerous research projects." "That would make us enemies of our own species," Jake said. "Better enemies than extinct," Sam replied. "If the expansionists awaken the Harvester, early both our civilizations will be destroyed along with any Federation survivors hiding in distant galaxies." The debate continued for weeks as Alliance leaders struggled with an impossible decision. They had sworn to protect humanity, but now they were considering acting against other humans to prevent a greater catastrophe. Laura Mitchell made the decision, easier by discovering something in the latest sensor readings. The expansionist neural networks are beginning to synchronize across multiple worlds. They are creating exactly the kind of linked consciousness that the Harvester feeds on. Jake authorized limited sabotage operations against the most dangerous expansionist research facilities. Alliance agents infiltrated their colonies and introduced subtle flaws into critical experiments. Computer viruses corrupted neural network data. Key scientists received job offers that took them away from dangerous projects. The sabotage was so subtle that most expansionists never realized it was happening. They attributed their setbacks to technical difficulties and redoubled their efforts, but the delays bought precious time and kept their consciousness development below critical thresholds. Meanwhile, Amy Bennett had continued monitoring the space between galaxies for signals from Federation survivors. She was now the Alliance's communication director and had detected weak transmissions from at least 6 different groups of survivors. "The signals are becoming stronger," Amy reported. "I think some of the survivors are moving closer to our galaxy. They might be planning to return." This news created new concerns for the Alliance leadership. If Federation survivors returned to the galaxy, they might attract the Harvester's attention, even if humanity remained below the danger threshold. "We need to establish contact with the survivors," Kate suggested. "Maybe we can coordinate our efforts to avoid awakening the Harvester." Jake was reluctant to break the silence that had protected humanity, but recognized they might not have a choice. "Open a communication channel to the strongest signal. Let them know that humans survived and are maintaining watch over the galaxy." The response came 3 weeks later. A group of Vorthon survivors operating from a mobile fleet between galaxies confirmed that several Federation species had escaped the Great Silence. They had been watching human development with great interest and concern. "Your species shows promise," the Vorthon message said. "But we are troubled by the advancement of some human colonies. You must prevent them from developing linked consciousness, or the Harvester will wake early." Jake realized that humanity had become the guardians of not just their own survival, but the survival of all remaining intelligent life in their part of the universe. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than anything he had ever carried. "Send a reply to the Vorthans," Jake ordered. "Tell them we understand the danger and are taking steps to prevent it. Ask for their advice on how to maintain the balance between progress and survival." As he watched the message being transmitted, Jake wondered if they were strong enough to carry this burden. Humanity had inherited an empty galaxy, and now they had to keep it empty enough to avoid attracting the attention of something that slept in the darkness between stars. 50 years had passed since the Great Silence, and humanity had learned to live with the weight of being the galaxy's guardians. Sam Johnson was now an elderly director of the Conservative Alliance, sitting in the same office that Jake Morrison had occupied before his death 10 years earlier. The monitoring stations had grown into a sophisticated network that watched every corner of the galaxy for signs of danger. Ruth Adams served as the Alliance's chief scientist and had devoted her life to understanding the Harvester phenomenon. Her research had revealed disturbing new information about the entity's behavior patterns. The creature was not as dormant as they had hoped. "Director Johnson, the energy readings from the galactic core are increasing," Ruth reported during their daily briefing. "The Harvester appears to be stirring in response to something." Sam studied the sensor data with growing concern. The patterns showed subtle but unmistakable signs that the entity was becoming more active. "What could be causing this? We believe it is responding to the development of a new species," Ruth replied. "Our long-range sensors have detected a civilization in the Altair system that has recently achieved faster-than-light travel. The Altarians had evolved from a primitive species that survived the Great Silence by remaining technologically simple. Over the past 1,000 years, they had slowly developed space travel and were now expanding beyond their home system. Their progress followed the same pattern as every previous galactic civilization." Tim Morgan led the government of the Expansionist Union, which now called itself the Terran Federation. They had successfully avoided crossing the consciousness threshold that attracted the Harvester, but maintained a much higher level of technology than the Conservative Alliance. His administration had established diplomatic contact with the Altarians 6 months earlier. "The Altarians are developing neural linking technology at an alarming rate," Tim reported during a secure communication with the Alliance. "Our xenobiologists believe they will achieve collective consciousness within 20 years. Lisa Murphy commanded the Alliance scout ship that had been monitoring Altarian development. Her reports painted a picture of a species rushing headlong toward the same fate that had befallen the Federation. "They are incredibly intelligent but completely unaware of the danger they face," Lisa said. "They see consciousness linking as the next step in their evolution. They have no concept of predators that hunt advanced minds." The Alliance faced the same terrible choice they had confronted with the Expansionist Union decades earlier. They could intervene to prevent the Altarians from developing dangerous technology, or they could allow natural evolution to proceed and hope for the best. "We cannot make this decision alone," Sam said during an emergency meeting of Alliance leadership. "This affects every survivor in the galaxy." Ruth had maintained contact with the Federation survivors hiding in distant galaxies, and they had been watching Altarian development with growing alarm. The Vorthons had sent increasingly urgent messages warning that early species advancement could trigger a premature awakening of the Harvester. "The survivors are divided," Ruth reported. "Some believe we should intervene directly to prevent the Altarians from advancing further. Others argue that interference might cause more problems than it solves." Amy Bennett's daughter, Carol, had inherited her mother's position as communication director and had been trying to establish direct contact with the Altarians. Her efforts had been partially successful, but the language barriers made complex explanations difficult. "I have managed to convey the basic concept of a galactic predator," Carol reported. "But they do not seem to understand the connection between consciousness development and predator attraction." The Terran Federation offered to share their knowledge with the Altarians, but Tim Morgan was concerned about revealing too much about human capabilities. "If we tell them about the Harvester, they might panic and make dangerous mistakes. If we do not tell them, they will continue advancing toward disaster." Sam authorized a careful approach that revealed some information while withholding the most dangerous details. A joint Alliance and Federation team led by Lisa Murphy made contact with the Altarian government and explained that advanced consciousness could attract hostile entities from deep space. The Altarian response was disappointing but predictable. They acknowledged the warning, but believed their technology was advanced enough to defend against any threat. Their scientists argued that consciousness linking would actually make them stronger and more capable of defending themselves. "They are making the same mistake every species makes," Ruth observed. "They believe advancement equals survival when the opposite is true." The situation became critical when Alliance sensors detected new energy patterns from the galactic core. The Harvester was not just stirring, but actively scanning space for signs of advanced consciousness. The entity appeared to be responding to the Altarian development despite being thousands of light years away. "We have to act," Sam decided. "If the Harvester wakes up early, it will consume every intelligent species in the galaxy, including the humans." The Alliance and Terran Federation launched a joint operation to disrupt Altarian consciousness research. They introduced computer viruses into their networks and caused critical experiments to fail. They also arranged for key Altarian scientists to suffer convenient accidents that removed them from dangerous projects. The sabotage worked, but created new problems. The Altarians began to suspect that someone was interfering with their research. They increased security around their projects and started developing backup systems that were harder to disrupt. More concerning was the reaction from Federation survivors outside the galaxy. Some groups criticized the intervention as a violation of natural development rights. Others argued that stronger action was needed to completely shut down Altarian civilization. "We are becoming what we feared," Carol said during a leadership meeting. "We are controlling the development of other species to serve our own survival. We are preventing the extinction of all intelligent life in the galaxy," Sam replied. "That responsibility was forced on us by circumstances, not choice." The debate about intervention continued as new challenges emerged. Long-range sensors detected several more species on distant worlds that were approaching technological advancement. Each new civilization represented another potential trigger for the Harvester's awakening. Ruth's research team made a breakthrough discovery that changed their understanding of the situation. The Harvester does not just feed on consciousness, she announced. It feeds on the conflict between different approaches to consciousness development. Our interventions might actually be making it stronger. This revelation forced a complete reassessment of Alliance strategy. If interference was strengthening the Harvester, then perhaps a different approach was needed. Sam made the hardest decision of his life. We stop all intervention operations. We return to pure monitoring and warning. If species choose to advance despite our warnings, that is their decision to make. The new policy felt like surrender, but it was the only choice that did not risk making the situation worse. The Alliance continued to watch and warn, but no longer actively sabotaged dangerous research. As the years passed, more species developed advanced technology, and some crossed the consciousness threshold that attracted predator attention. But the Harvester remained dormant, apparently satisfied with the natural cycle of advancement and extinction. Humanity had learned to live with an impossible burden. They could not save every species, but they could bear witness to their choices. They maintained the great silence not through control, but through wisdom. They watched over a galaxy that had learned the price of reaching too far into the unknown. The stars remained mostly quiet, but not from death. The silence came from understanding that some hungers were too vast to fight and some knowledge too dangerous to pursue. Humanity stood guard over that understanding, knowing that their vigil would last as long as intelligent life existed among the stars.